Mr. Kai Heikkilä from the European Commission, senior expert, has been involved in the Rural Vision 2040 work, and I think this vision could give some tools to deal the challenges that Mr. Pesonen was emphasizing shortly. So please, Kai, welcome.
Indeed, but do you hear me? Just I'm not quite sure if I use the right microphone here.
Yeah, should I share your slides, or would you like to do that yourself?
I think I can try to share them myself first.
Please be welcome.
Obviously, I could talk half an hour about what Pekka just said. I will not attempt doing this because it raises an enormous number of different questions. And I think that perhaps some of Pekka's concerns could be to a certain extent answered by the initiative that I'm going to talk about. So just to present myself very shortly, my name is Kai Heikkilä. I'm a senior expert in the DG Agriculture in the unit coordinating rural development, and a former desk for Finland for 8 years, and with a lot of experience in competition and food chain issue policy. So Pekka, I have a bone to pick with you on several of these things later. But let me just proceed with the presentation here. Let me see if I'm going to pick it from my screen and do it in a slideshow. Tell me if this is it's working or not, but I think it should be. And let's put it on a. This one needs to be smaller, and let's put it in a slideshow. So I hope you can all see this clearly. Tell me if you don't. Pekka already mentioned something very crucial. And that is that we do need the input from several policies to make rural areas work, to several financing sources, and also to coordinate them and to make them work for the same aim. This obviously cannot be done only by rural development or the CAP policies. This would be impossible. There are so many other areas, so many financing sources that impact our rural areas. And unfortunately, the structure of European financing of policies is quite compartmentalized. You have several different policies, several different funds, and this is what goes on. So this lack of common vision for rural areas, in all of their diversity with economic, social, and other aspects, including agriculture and other activities, this was recognized by this commission already in the president's address, in the president's list of tasks to us. And one of these projects that was now finished on the, finished, let's say that the communication was finished, is the long-term vision for rural areas. So what does this vision actually mean? What does it address? It wants to be a comprehensive and future-oriented view on rural areas. This sort of view means that we have to identify drivers. We have to look at how we would like rural areas to be in 2040. It is a theoretical exercise, but if we want to put all of the policies together, if we want to give them a common aim, we do need to have a scientifically solid idea of what impacts society and rural areas specifically towards 2040. It is, of course, one theoretical and modeling exercise. There can be others, but this is some we did agree with several specialists and in public consultations what the challenges and opportunities and drivers could be, and this forms the nucleus and also the framework of what we have done in the vision. So it's not only the view, it's also the idea of how all EU policies and not only the CAP should work together. CAP cannot do it all. I mean, there is simply no money, there is no mandate to it. We also need to operationalize a Green Deal and the COVID-19 recovery context. This requires both a theoretical framework, what is actually up there, what are we up against, what do we need to do, but it also requires then an analysis of different policies and to see them together. One important thing is, of course, to analyze the situation, which we have done. There has been also a huge public consultation and a lot of work that went into an almost 200-page staff working document that deals with many different aspects of rural areas from many sectors, social, economy and society as a whole. It does contain gaps because we also noticed that there is lack of information specific to rural areas, but it is still there, and it is what also our recommendations here are based on. And one thing that I would like to particularly talk about today is the action plan. So as I said, there is the analysis of what our rural areas look like now, what they should look like, what the policies are, but also there are different actions. There's implementation, horizontal action, and very specific flagships and other actions that should point out the way towards some of the goals that we have set for ourselves. And I already mentioned this bottom-up preparation. There were several consultation rounds. So this is, and also a big conference, good participation, and many of the opinions and ideas were quite a lot the same that we had already figured out in our analysis and other scholarly work. So we were quite happy that we did not find ourselves in a situation where the stakeholders and rural population had a completely different idea of where we should be going. Another thing, what this vision is, it's not a program of different types of new money that EU is going to give to everyone. There is a lot of money involved in different programs that are showcased here in this vision. But it is also a program whose realization really relies on involvement of all governance levels in implementation. So especially in what is called the Rural Pact. This is something that we are still figuring out, and that will hopefully then happen in reality next year. And it is not only governance, it's also stakeholders and rural populations who should participate in this exercise. Now, I mentioned what we were doing in research. So we did do an extensive analysis of the trends and challenges in rural areas, and obviously we need to find out what the general problems are, or the general challenges are, and also to identify the opportunities. So first, some of the findings which are in the staff working document. Basically, there is an economic underperformance, there is an employment gap, there is a skills gap, and basically there is quite a big of gap in digital skills and digital availability. And here there are also interesting things from our respondents, and they very much emphasize that economy and lack of services in rural areas is a problem, and that they also found that some new economic opportunities like social innovation are important for rural attractiveness. So this is the situation in general that we are facing. And what is very clear from this study is that rural areas do need, as a whole, special attention and a special vision so that we can prove and direct our policies to the problems that rural areas very often share, although Of course, I do have to point out that there is a huge variety in rural areas where there's really no one-size-fits-all solution. The one thing that I perhaps would like to stress here is that what we find systematically is that the further the rural area gets from cities, from urban areas, the bigger the problems tend to get. So there is this distance factor is quite paramount in our analysis. And remote areas are the ones that we, in this respect, should perhaps concentrate the most on. Now, of course, the picture is not bad itself, although I mean sometimes we do paint it as bad. The opportunities are many. One is Pekka already mentioned about these services that we provide. Of course, food and food security are extremely important, even the crucial ones. But there are many things that impact this food security and that come on top of that to make the picture much broader in rural economy and society. Ecosystem services and in particular now, of course, sexy topic, bio and circular economy, and the different ecological transition. Rural areas with the renewable materials and other opportunities that they provide are really in a key position if we do get it right in channeling this ecological and digital transition. Obviously, first thing is to have the enabling conditions for this. Then demands from society are increasing, as Pekka already mentioned. I mean, we need nutritious food. We need food that is ecologically better produced, that deals better with resources. Yes, we can deliver that, but it doesn't come out of itself, and it needs a holistic approach to achieve it. And then the recovery from COVID-19 crisis, a little bit of a broken record to say this, but there certainly is much more attention to what rural areas can offer in terms of lifestyle services, tourism, business opportunities than there was before this crisis. So this has put things into a different perspective. Now, very quickly here, what is this vision? How did we then formulate it? So this is, of course, a schematic one, but this is what we are based on what the needs are. What do we need to do? We need to have stronger rural areas with better services, better communications, and also connected digitally and with transport. We cannot allow rural areas be behind some sort of a crumbling digital wall and roads that are not even fit even for tractors. Prosperous rural areas. This means that we need to have different and develop different types of economic and innovative economic activities, and then of course the resilience, climate change, environmental change, and social resilience. Demographic changes are hitting rural areas quite hard. There is a lack of young people, lack of opportunities for them, and also a lack of caregivers for those who are older and stay there. It's a big package. So these are the ones that they all impact each other and cannot really be seen in isolation from each other. And what are we going to do in general about it? I mentioned the Rural Action Plan. It's about 8 flagship and 26 accompanying actions. Our critics have already said that, yeah, this is old stuff. Yeah, to a certain extent it is. But what one has to in these actions and flagships recognize that although some of these have already been started and they are ongoing, they do include new directions, orientations, and elements for rural areas. This is one of the big things that we have inside the Commission and found out is that policies and people who work from have realized how their policies impact and can impact rural areas. So we have used this momentum to let's say, pump a bit up these flagships and actions, those that are are not new, and to see and orientate them better for rural areas. This is, of course, this is our general view, that we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we have to use to the maximum what we already have. And you can see the same stronger, prosperous, connected here. And then on the right-hand side, you have what we would call a implementing support. It's sort of more horizontal. Pekka mentioned the rural proofing, extremely important. We need to look at all levels of governance, all levels of administrations, how not only our policy initiatives, but also on how the implementation, even in relatively, even sometimes on a small scale, how they impact rural areas, because the effect is certainly not the same as for more urbanized parts of Europe. Then, as already mentioned, that we had problems in getting data. It's Pekka mentioned here already the value chains, competition. Even here there is some gap, but there are some big gaps on especially local level. We often found out that we could see a territorial level, but this territory included a big city or several big cities, but we couldn't always get to the granularity that we would have needed to know what rural areas need, what is happening, how the developments are. This is something we need to work on, and we'll work on with the Joint Research Service in particular. Then part of this coordination, Pekka mentioned that it is sometimes the coordination and common concept is lacking. It's also sometimes difficult for the rural people to get through all of these and enterprises to get through all of these support possibilities. So we are planning to have a toolkit about access to a different combination of EU funds. Most of us know who practice here also, I mean, either as farmers, entrepreneurs, or administrators know how to juggle with the regional funds, the so-called structural funds and CAP, but we don't necessarily know about the other possibilities and how to combine them. It is an important point, and not only for the administrators, but also for entrepreneurs who are planning on starting or expanding their businesses. Now, I mentioned these particular actions that I wanted to talk about, and these are actions that address rural enterprises directly or to enable them in our action plan. Pekka already gave almost a complete list of what we need in general, and where the let's say the major challenges are. The first of them is digital. This is why there is a large flagship, a very broad flagship on the digital futures. You can read it in the text. I'm not going to start detail it, but it's also for access, skills, and also broadband rollout. This is all included, and it tries to take a comprehensive look at this crucial aspect. Sustainable mobility and urban-rural linkages. There's going to be major study and support for this within a larger project. And something that is, as a matter of fact, quite new. Horizon Europe is, of course, not new, but it is a research and innovation push for rural communities. Not only communities in a sense of communes or regions, but also to really see what we can do in innovation for rural enterprise, rural production, rural services. This is something where we have a lot of questions, and where research and participation of rural actors in this research is certainly needed. And I mentioned bioeconomy also as one of the main opportunities. this is something that is promoted in a specific action, which is still being constructed. Forestry is going to be one major part of it, but it certainly is going to be more than that. And then this to wrap these possibilities up in a form and to profit from each other's experience, we plan to launch a rural revitalization platform. It is a sort of one-stop shop where the actors can see what is already being done, both in administration and entrepreneurs themselves in different areas. So this is what I would say is what we plan to enable better economic futures in rural areas. Then to conclude this presentation, I would point out the major action that is specifically for entrepreneurship in rural areas. This is a long negotiated large flagship to develop SMEs in rural areas by all types of initiatives, but mainly by cluster network and cooperation. And this comes under Single Market Program, under COSME and European Enterprise Network. These are, of course, not new things. Single Market Program is being launched, but what is new is that there is a specific rural attention, rural part of this. So it is, let's just say, this is to a certain extent rurally proved now, even though the methodology might have been somewhat unorthodox. And social economy is something that the Commission is very keen on, and we should be, because it holds great promise for rural areas. And this is social economy business models are going to be promoted by this action as well. And then the list goes on. There is attention to retail, local supply chains, and also educating or rather training and empowering future entrepreneurs. And now this goes for all of what I have detailed now, but especially for this. All of these actions come on top and try to focus and coordinate funding that already comes from cohesion funds and from rural development and other structural funding, and of course then national funding that is very often crucial for these actions to take place. And then a second conclusion is that I have hardly at all talked about agriculture, and this is agriculture is certainly something we deal with in this vision. But the idea of this vision is not to double the CAP or rural development, but to rather to see where agriculture and other parts of rural economy and society fit together in synergies and in cross-referencing each other. So in a sense, this vision tries to take all of these policies one step further in coordination and enabling them better for rural areas in all of its aspects. So thank you for your attention.